if you listened to our last segment or if you just joined us, it was kind of the last 30 seconds of what Ben said was just made me kind of go, do what? Because he's describing a waiver that we all have signed at some point when we go to some facility or we rent a jumpy house or, we go to some amusement parks or whatever, you're signing a waiver.
Sure. How about whitewater rafting?
Whitewater
Absolutely.
rafting, that's another one.
Zip lines, bouncy houses, trampoline parks.
Excursions on cruise ships, all that stuff you sign a waiver for, but yet the state of Tennessee does not recognize them for a minor. Is that basically?
Minors, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are under the misconception that, hey, if I sign this waiver for myself and my child, it's going to be binding on both of us. And that hasn't been the law in Tennessee since the late 1980s, actually. Don't tell anybody, but for some of my clients. But the reality is that the courts have looked upon those with disfavor since the early 1980s. But on the other hand, there haven't been any cases, really, since the 1980s. Right. There have been a couple, but none that have touched on the specific issue. So that's what we did in our case. We brought that issue up, and the court said, no, that's probably right. But on this other issue of medical expenses, which is essentially the value of your claim, if you can't have medical expenses as part of your claim, then you don't have a very valuable claim in our view. And the court said if your parent, most of the time, if your parent signs that waiver for you, your medical expenses will be extinguished because the medical expenses is carried by the parent and not the child.
So I want to make sure I understand. Before this adjustment, if a parent signed a waiver for themselves and their kids, the business may be responsible for medical expenses, but nothing else.
No, actually, they would be responsible for everything else, including medical expenses. That's the big change. So before this opinion came out, the waiver would not be effective, and you could pursue the case just like any other lawsuit.
Got it.
What's happened here is the medical expenses component of that, at least in the opinion of the court, which is subject to review, is now extinguished in most cases.
So the parents are now taking the responsibility of their child's medical expenses.
That's right.
And so they presumably would have health insurance to cover that, but any other damages they may be entitled to.
Right. Yeah. These are cases where, and you wouldn't have medical expenses that would be invoked the way we're talking about it, but you didn't have health insurance. So yeah, the child would be taken care of in terms of care and the carrier covering it. This is only about you being able to then recover those expenses as part of a lawsuit.